Let's take a paper doily and turn it into this fun-filled fantasy festive floral. Hi, I'm Marion Dutton. Now before we jump into this video, don't forget to hit that like button if you are enjoying the tutorials on this channel, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done already, and if you hit that bell notification you'll get notified each time I upload a new video. Okay, so we're going to begin with this paper doily. I'm working on a 12 by 14 inch canvas, and this fits quite nicely at the halfway point. I'm looking for the lace, the bottom of the lace, to just fit nicely at the bottom part of the canvas. So I'm folding the doily in half and I'm going to cut it down the middle. And we can actually use that other half for another project. And then I'm taping this at that halfway point. Again, the position just so that I've got that lace, the scalloped edge of the doily right at the bottom edge of the canvas. And once you're all in position, I'm using black gesso and I'm going to start painting the entire canvas with that black gesso. Now I am pushing this into the holes, so you do want to sort of make sure, and you also want to be brushing away, don't be brushing inwards, because the chances are you'll end up not getting those lovely scalloped edges. So you notice that I'm brushing the paint away and down from that doily. And you want to paint the entire canvas using this black gesso. This is an acrylic primer. Once you've covered the entire canvas, you're then going to use the hairdryer and dry that off before we switch on to the oils. Once I'm happy, everything's nice and dry, I actually remove the doily. And you will find that some of the paint is probably still a little bit wet underneath. So once again, I'm going to go over with the hairdryer and dry everything off. So back to that black gesso, and what I'm going to do now is just neaten the outer edge up using that black gesso, and I'm also going to go all the way across and paint over where the tape lines were. And once again, get that hairdryer out and dry everything off before we actually switch on to the oils. I'm now going to cover the entire canvas with some oil medium. I'm using a Zest It clear medium, but something like linseed oil or walnut oil will work as well. And it is important you put this on sparingly. You're looking for a nice thin coat over everywhere. And I'm also going to go over where the doily is as well. We're literally covering the entire canvas with this medium. Once I'm happy, I'll take a paper towel and just wipe away that excess medium. You're looking for sort of an eggshell finish rather than anything that's too glossy, and adding this medium will help the paint flow and blend nicely underneath when we start applying that paint. I'm now using cadmium red, and I'm beginning just to put a basic sketch. Now don't get too crazily freaked over the drawing side of things. We're really just putting a very loose square shape, if you like, for where the candle is going to be. And I'm also going to put some loose shapes where I want to position the flowers. So I've cropped in a little bit here so that you can see this very, very simple sketch. The flower shapes are more like an oval rather than a round, nice loose oval shape. So we're doing 2 poinsettias and then 1 Christmas rose. So again, just very loose oval shapes. So we're beginning in the background first. Now that I've got the position of where the flowers are going to go, we can start working on the background. You're not really going to see this colour picking up. The colours I'm actually using is alizarin crimson and also some Indian yellow. Indian yellow is a very transparent colour. Now when you put the Indian yellow over the top of the black, you'll see it goes green, and of course I'm going over that with some of that alizarin to make more of an orangey colour. So I'm wanting some sort of warm tones fading into the alizarin, and then the third colour we'll be using is some mauve. The further away from that upper right corner, the darker the area is going to be. So just to recap, we've got the Indian yellow with alizarin in that upper right corner to make a nice orangey colour, and then we go to alizarin, and then we go to mauve. And I'm also going to be using that mauve underneath the lovely lacy tablecloth. And again, these are transparent colours. We're going over that oil medium with these transparent colours, and then we'll be popping the lights over the top. So of course you can't really see them at this stage. So now I'm going to begin using my fingers to pop on some of these little light circles. Now we want to start dull and build up the lights. So the first colour I'm using is cadmium orange, and I'm making these little circles, and of course it'll pick up the colours from underneath. And we really want that. We want these lovely blended tones. So that's cadmium orange. So now I'm going to begin building up the lights, and I'm using yellow ochre. Again, making these varied in size as well, so some of them are a little bit larger and some are a bit smaller. And I'm using my finger. I would advise you to wear gloves whilst you're doing this. You don't want paint all over your hands, and just a little bit of health and safety to have those gloves on. And I'm using my finger to gently rub those into the colours that are underneath, and we're getting this lovely blurry effect. So now I'm continuing to build up that light, and this time I'm using cadmium yellow. It's a little bit brighter than that yellow ochre. That's cadmium yellow with a little bit of white in there. And again, continuing with these little circles. So once I'm happy, I start blending these in and blurring them out a little bit more. So I'm using a nice soft mop at this point and kind of working very lightly back and forth to really blend these out. So once I'm happy with the blurry background, I begin layering yet again and putting some more of the circles. And again, I'm just going to jump between the different colours. I'm trying to keep these circles nice and irregular. So I've slowed it down again, just so you can kind of see what I'm up to. Now I was having way too much fun with this background, and of course I'm blurring and blending some more of these layers that I've added, and then I end up with this smudge up in that upper right corner, which really started to frustrate me because you know, I was quite happy with it up until that point. So what you see me doing now is kind of getting a little frustrated and blending this out, only I ended up with these lovely sort of starburst effects, a lovely happy accident. So I thought I'd share this part with you. As I'm blurring and blending, I suddenly start to get some of these lovely starburst effects and decide I quite like them, and so I really start to enhance that, and you'll see now I'm kind of going into the center of these little light areas and then dragging out these lovely starburst effects from there. Now again, this is optional. If you don't particularly like this, then stay with the original idea, but I quite liked how this ended up turning out. Again, one of those lovely happy accidents because I was playing around far too much, but I ended up quite enjoying the final results. I'd love to know what you think in the comments below, if you actually quite like this happy accident. So inside of those little starbursts now, I'm putting thick titanium white, And then I'm just going to use my finger just to soften those in. Okay, moving on to the candle. So I'm going to just block this in entirely with alizarin crimson. So literally colouring book style, just cover the entire candle area with a nice thin coat of that alizarin crimson. So continuing with the blocking in, I'm using a grey. That's just black and white, and I think there's a few other colours kind of thrown in there, just a nice grey. I've added a little extra medium as well, just a small amount, just to make it a little bit thinner. And we're blocking in the Christmas rose with this grey colour. And then for the poinsettias, we're going to just use alizarin crimson as well, the same as the candle, just blocking that in, a very small amount of medium. You really don't need a lot. Don't forget we've got that medium on the canvas from earlier, so you don't need a lot, but we do want the underpainting of these flowers just to be a little bit thinner. So think of this as just the blocking in stages. No details at this point. And here I'm using some sap green to block in where the pines are going to go. Again, no details, just blocking in a basic shape. And I've added a very small amount of black to that sap green where I want it to be a little bit darker whilst it's covering over that lace tablecloth. We really don't want that peeking through. So moving on to this tablecloth now, this lacy tablecloth, and we want to make it look like it's got folds. So what I'm doing, I'm mixing this is turquoise with black. Now you really could use any form of a grey colour here. I quite like that sort of cooler colour from the blue, but if you don't have turquoise, you could use blue and black, anything that will give you a grey colour. So I'm getting the shadows underneath the flowers and underneath the pines, and then I'm pulling downwards and trying to create the illusion of folds. We will be going over and highlighting this, but you do need that dark colour in there to create the illusion that the tablecloth is actually folding over a table, sort of draping down. So once I'm happy with my folds, I'm now switching to titanium white, and we're applying some thick titanium white to pick out some highlights. So where you've left the white of that the lacy cloth showing, you want to pop on some white and kind of create the illusion of these folds folding and dropping down. So again, you're following the contour of where the folds are. Now I have cropped in very closely here so that you're able to see how thick I'm actually popping this paint on. Now again, this is going to be our first pass. We will be going over this with some even thicker white highlights. So hopefully even at this stage, this early stage, you can really see that that flat white shape from when we used that stencil is now giving the illusion that it is folding and bending. A really nice effect. So once again, I've cropped in just so that you can see how thick I'm really layering this final white highlight onto the lace. And you really do need to put this on thick for it to really pop and show the details in there. And again, I'm sort of applying this on a little bit wiggly as well, and not really worrying about that, because it really does sort of give the illusion that this is some kind of crocheted tablecloth. So moving on to the candle now, and I'm using cadmium red to begin highlighting this candle. Now you want to start at the brightest point, and I want to use this up and down stroke to really sort of give the illusion that there's it's almost like you're polishing that that candle, and you get that lovely smooth feeling of that candle wax. So I'm going up and down, start in the center, and then without reloading, you want to go up and down and keep going up and down and back and forth to get this sort of polished effect. I'm also using that cadmium red just to reshape the top part of the candle as well and get a nice shape at the top. Now you do want to leave that nice dark area as well. Now at the sides I'm using some of that turquoise, and just to give that sort of cool reflective light and to help give that roundness. And again, I'm using that back and forth stroke. Now if you don't have turquoise, simply use ultramarine blue and a little bit of white and you'll get the same effect. And then in the center here I'm now using some titanium white, and I sort of want to get that little bit of that highlighted area right in the center. Again, using white on the top of the candle as well, and popping out those highlights. Again, that nice cool reflective light on either side. And now I'm using some cadmium red with a little bit of white just to create some of that wax that's pouring over the top. Some nice loose strokes. So moving on to the flame, first of all I begin with some cadmium orange to get kind of a base tone in there. Inside of the cadmium orange, still allowing some of that orange to peek through, I'm using some cadmium yellow. At the bottom there is a little bit of that turquoise again. And then right inside there you want to use some nice thick titanium white. And again, like before, if you really want those highlights to pop, you really do need to apply that that titanium white nice and thick. So now I'm back to the orange and just kind of reshaping everything that I've done already, and then I finish with a very fine amount of black just to put the candle wick in there as well. So now that I've got the flame on, I can add a little bit more wax. I'm using titanium white just to pop on some final little highlights. And highlighting the top edge of that wax. And here I've gone back to that cadmium red and I'm just popping a few little sort of stripes in there just to give the candle a little more texture. Okay, moving on to the poinsettias. I'm using cadmium red to begin highlighting these lovely flowers. So I've slowed everything down so that you're able to see the strokes, and really they're really like a leaf shape. Make sure all your strokes are directed to the center of each leaf, each individual petal. And of course leave that lovely dark alizarin crimson showing as well. Now if it helps you, you can always very lightly draw the shapes and then actually do the petal stroke. So this is a flower that's actually on its side, so be aware of that when you're doing these foreshortened petals. Really you're only seeing a very small amount of these ones on the side. And I'm going to repeat this exact process with the other flower. Now it isn't showing up so much on this one, and I will show you what to do with that a little bit later on. Really I'm just focusing on getting a basic shape in there to begin with. So moving on to the Christmas rose now, and again I'm showing this in real time, so I'm very carefully sketching my flower shape out, and then I'm going to begin, and I'm just using titanium white, but I'm going to begin creating the individual petals. And again I've really cropped in so that you're able to see the strokes that I'm using to create this flower. So here you can see I'm just sketching a basic shape in there. I'm not worrying about picking up any of the other colours. But again, notice how all of my strokes are all directed to that centre of the flower. So now on to the pines. So again, just to get these needles in there, I'm just using a very little pull down stroke. The colour is sap green with a little yellow ochre, and then I'll start to increase the brightness. Now I give a really good demonstration of this in my in last year's Christmas painting, and I'll pop a link to that in the description below. So if you haven't had a go at the Christmas lantern painting, I would highly recommend you have a go at that one. This is another lovely festive painting for you. And the free template for the Christmas lantern is now available on my website. Again, it is for free, there's no catches, and I'd love to see your version if you have a go at this. But again, just see how I'm pulling these little tiny pines, little needles, just pulling downwards to get that effect. And we'll be gradually building up the lights. Again, I always start with my dullest highlight, if you like, and then slowly build up the light colours. So I'm now adding some alizarin crimson and a little bit of black just to get some of the darker tones into this poinsettia. And we're really going to sort of start popping out some of the details now. Now everything's all in place, I'm able to really start adding some highlights. So once again, I'm using a cadmium red. This time I've added a little bit of cadmium orange to that and a touch of titanium white to really bring the highlights out into this flower. And it is the same stroke as we've done already. I'm pulling everything down into that center. So really starting to pop the highlights out now. Everything's all in place. And again, moving on to the one at the back, same colours, just a little bit brighter now, really starting to pop out some highlights. And now beginning to add the details to the Christmas rose. Again, just applying that paint just a little bit thicker and adding in some extra details, really starting to put that titanium white on nice and thick. For the centre of the flowers, for the centre of the Christmas rose, I've used a burnt umber in the centre and then gone over that with some cadmium yellow and some white. And for the poinsettias, we're using a yellow ochre centre and then highlighting that with cadmium yellow and white. So here I'm adding a little bit of sap green and sort of feathering and fanning that out up the petals. And then I'm bringing some of that titanium white back over the top of that green. Here I'm adding a few little dark details of that green. And then here back to that titanium white just to kind of neaten up all of my edges. For the table, we really want to keep that nice and subtle. So just to remind you, we put that mauve transparent paint under there, and all I've done is taken a little bit of titanium white, wipe most of that off my brush, and I'm just going to pull down some strokes just to give the illusion that there's either a dark tablecloth or something underneath that lovely crocheted lace tablecloth as well. Here I'm going over with a little bit of ivory black just to create a little shadow, and again just pulling that down just to create some sort of folds and a little bit of extra interest. So I'm back onto the background now. I'm starting to create a few more of those little starbursts. I was having far too much fun with this background. I'd like to caution you not to overdo these things, but actually if you're having as much fun as I was, then knock yourself out with it. It's really enjoyable doing these interesting different backgrounds. So here I'm kind of dancing around the whole painting now, popping out some extra highlights, highlighting the wax and the candle, and just popping in a little bit of extra highlights around the lace and inside the centre of the flowers. So moving back to the tablecloth now everything's in position, I'm able to put a really nice shadow underneath all of the flowers, and all I'm using for that now is just ivory black, and of course it will be picking up some of that that white paint, so it's giving a sort of a nice dark grey, and I really just want to plant everything down so it looks like it's actually sitting onto this tablecloth by putting a nice strong shadow underneath. Once I'm happy, I sign the painting. Only after I sign the painting, I decide I've still not quite finished. It was one of them paintings that I was thoroughly enjoying. So stay tuned, don't disappear just yet as I show you the next part. So you are supposed to finish once you've signed a painting, only again, like I said, I couldn't resist this one. I was having far too much fun. So I decided to put a few little berries, and I'm simply using alizarin crimson just to put a nice strong dark red in there, and then just using cadmium red to pop on some highlights. And of course it is Christmas, so we needed to get that gold glitter out. And what I'm doing now is using an old brush, and I've dipped it into that glitter, and I'm very carefully applying that around the outer edges of the poinsettias. Now at this point I realised it would be much easier to do this while the painting is flat. It was quite difficult to actually do this upright for the camera. But hopefully you can get the idea of what I'm actually doing to position that that glitter all around the outer edges of each of those petals. I also use a little bit in the centre as well, just to get that extra sparkle. Of course, because the glitter was going everywhere, at this point I decided to take it off the easel, and I actually do it flat, but here you can see the finished results, and I think you will agree with me, it really does have something very festive to this painting. So here is the finished picture. And again, I really enjoyed doing this one, so I hope you guys do as well. And if you do decide to have a go, don't forget to apply to join the MazArt tribe. You will have to agree to the terms in the group before you'll get accepted. But once you're accepted, you're able to share your versions of this painting with me on there. So finally, now everything's in position, I'm using a nice fine brush just to apply some very thick titanium white to that lace, just to add some final extra details. I really do hope you all enjoy doing this one. And again, like I said, if you do have a go, do come and join the tribe and share your versions on there. And if you haven't had a go at the Christmas painting that I put on last year with the Christmas lantern, I really do think you'll enjoy that one. I will put a link in the description as well, so that you're able to have a look at the video for that, the tutorial for that. And the template for that painting is now up on the website. So pop on over to the website, add that to your cart and check out. It is free, you won't be charged for that, it's completely free. And again, share your versions with me in the MazArt tribe. I really do hope you've enjoyed this lovely festive painting. And if you do decide to have a go, please don't forget to join the MazArt tribe on Facebook and share your versions with me on there. So I'd really like to take this opportunity to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a happy, healthy 2020. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you again in the next video.